Some young boy, black or white, no matter what their color is, I think is going to see this film and see themselves and not feel so alone.
You've just sort of brought back my first experience of watching this extraordinary film and feeling that sense of elation and also a deep sense of melancholy. Can I start by asking you, Barry, about what first attracted you to Terrell's play and how the project sort of had its genesis?
Yeah, the play came to me from mutual friends of ours. Terrell and I grew up like blocks from each other in Miami, a lot of the same blocks depicted in the film, but we didn't know each other. And so when these friends at the Borscht Film Festival read Terrell's play, they said, "This isn't about you, but it's about you." And when I read it, I understood fully what they meant. And I felt like there was this space in it that could be filled with visual imagery. And so Terrell and I began talking about, what that would and should and could look like.
And Terrell, what was the experience like for you thinking about the work translating to the screen?
Well, thank you all again. Thanks so much. I say that because one of the things that's interesting about this piece is that when I first put it together, I've been writing plays since I was 13 years old, thanks to some very smart people who were like, "You like to make up things, so you should write stuff." But this piece was written in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. The original piece was written in July of 2003, which was the same time that I had lost my mother. She was a drug addict and had succumbed to AIDS-related complications. And so losing her and graduating from undergrad, about to go to grad school for playwriting, I was trying to put down on the page just events in my life, moments and memories that I thought defined me or made me who I was. And what patterns was I living out? What were recurring? Just making sense. You know that feeling? No? Just me? And, anyway, that's what I was trying to do. But I always knew, because I also wrote it during the same time I wrote this piece called The Brother Size, which we performed here at the Young Vic about 10 years ago, actually. And I knew that was a play. I didn't know what this was. This was an artist trying to figure things out. And when Barry got a hold of it, the first thing he said was, "There's something to this. I don't know what it is, but there's something to this." And I said, "Okay, well, cool. Peace," and that's how our conversations went. He kept coming back to it, trying to figure out what that something was. And then at some point, he said, "I think I cracked it." And what that crack became this. So I can't be more grateful for that. But the same feeling that you say you have, I feel it every time I see it. There is a great elation, at the same time, a huge melancholy that sits on me for watching those images, watching these beautiful people play those images.
I'm going to ask the beautiful people to talk about... Naomie, you can't just deny a microphone. It's an exquisite work about identity, and it really has such a unique and intimate quality to it, at the same time as resonating in very universal ways. And I'm always interested in a work that is also so stripped back. You trust the audience, to read between the lines. Can I ask each of you, or whoever wants to go first, to talk a little bit about how you came to the roles as performers, and because a lot of it as well is not necessarily bringing you together as performers. So can you talk about how you worked with each other, or did you work in a more isolated way?
Well, I think you kind of touched on it before when you said it's a story that's so specific that it is universal. So I think, at least for me, in reading it, I related on such a heavy level because I've seen Sharon. I've loved Sharon. I'm best friends with Sharon. I've seen him in passing. So I felt just something tugging on my heart, specifically to help in whatever way I could to tell this story, because this person is someone who we all see. This person is someone who we feel for, because we see the pain in their eyes because they don't know how to express themselves. We see that they can't love themselves because whatever reason, and because of that they can't love others. And so yeah, it was just this sensation that I needed to feel, and I needed to do the best I could to be a part of something like this.
And very beautifully. Naomie, can I ask you about how you came to the film? And I also understand that there was your extraordinary performance here was achieved in a very limited window of time.
Yeah, I only had 3 days because I was doing a press tour for another film, and that's all it ended up being, was these 3 days. So I had to do all of the research beforehand. I think I got the role a month before I started shooting, so I had to watch a lot of YouTube videos about crack addiction particularly in the 80s, and there are some amazing documentaries on YouTube actually, which gave me huge insights, and I was able to watch lots of interviews with crack addicts, but it was a real struggle for me to find this character of Paula, because I think I had so much judgment of her initially. You know, I found her to be a bad mother. I can understand how she was an addict, and she had a child, and why wasn't she a better mother? And the real journey for me, because I think ultimately to really play a part well, you have to fall in love with them on some level. You have to deeply connect with them and have compassion for them. And my journey through doing all the research I did was finding a way to do that. And the biggest intro for me to achieve that journey was discovering that the vast majority, in fact, every single woman that was interviewed about their addiction had been sexually abused or had been raped in their lives. And it was almost like that trauma created such a split within them that they were constantly trying to escape themselves. They had the outer appearance of someone who's holding it together, but inside they were in so much pain and so much torment. And that, for me, was the way that I was able to have compassion and get the into Paula, and this conviction that I wanted to play that full complexity of who she was. You know, play her brutality and her heartlessness at points, but also show that underneath that there's this beating heart always.
Yeah, I fell in love with the script, the themes, and thank you for your love and support. The themes in Moonlight, you know, were some that I had spoken about in my music, and I've always been an advocate for the other. You know, that person who's oftentimes discriminated against because of their sexual orientation, their race, gender. And when I read Moonlight, I cried. I was very moved by the story and the script, and I felt as though I knew every last one of those characters. From Juan, the drug addict in my community, not drug addict, excuse me, the drug dealer in my community who also mentored the young boys in the community, to Paula. You know, I have people in my family, women in my family who have struggled with crack addiction, to Chiron, who was like a little cousin just trying to find his way, and Teresa, that one ally in the family that you have that you can talk to and you can lean on her shoulder and she doesn't judge you, and she's like a surrogate mom. So I was connected to Teresa. I felt in my heart that Teresa was just like myself, someone who tries to, as much as I possibly can, to wrap my arms around those who are trying to find themselves and make sense of you know, the complexities that they have. And I dropped everything I had going on, and I got myself together and went to Miami, and I filmed this because this is such an important story. Representation is important. Some young boy, black or white, no matter what their color is, I think is going to see this film and see themselves and not feel so alone.
I came to it from, got passed along to me, and it was the best script I'd ever read. And I just remember having that sense. I think I said finally, I just wanted a part like this. I wanted to be a part of a story like this. I've been very fortunate to work in television, film and television, but it's rare that you, as an actor, get to approach something where you get to engage with your heart and your soul and understand that the project is, you can't come into a project like this and not be cognizant of the fact that it's so much bigger than you. And so I was just really excited to be a part of it and get to be challenged in a way that I hadn't been challenged up to that point. And to work with some of these other cast members, because I didn't get to work with everyone. But again, I think the main thing was the story, and really could hear the character on the page and get a real sense of what Barry was going for. And just really honored and humbled to be a part of this story.
Yeah, part of it was, I guess, intent, and the script, to be honest. You mentioned schedules, and scheduling was a large part of this process. My queen, Miss Harris, didn't say, but that film that she was on that junket with was James Dan Bond. So I blame you guys for us having to do her scenes in 3 days. But it started with Terrell's words. I thought the dialogue in the play was very potent, and I wanted to create enough space around that, with visual storytelling. So when those words do appear, they kind of land in a very particular way. And I think the other side of it is just really talented and passionate people. The Chirones never met. It was a fact for me. I was like, you guys are not to meet. You guys are not to rehearse together, and you're not to watch each other's dailies. I will dictate, what's still within character and what's not. I cast them to be different people who are playing the same character. So a lot of it, I have to step back and tip my hat, because I'm not the one up on the screen. But I think they all were just dedicated and passionate and brought their full selves to the movie, which you can't ask much more than that. Am I right? You can speak on it if you want. Okay.
I will say this. This was the first film. I was the freshman of the crew, walking on set, and one of the amazing things about Barry was just his warmth. When I got to set, he said, I'll never forget it, he said, there is no such thing as making a mistake. And then all of us, because I was nervous as hell, and my shoulders just went, okay. So as long as I think all of us were being honest and truthful and going with our inner compass and following our soul clocks on when it was time to say something and when it was not, and it was time to listen, I think that Barry was a happy director. But I just want to say thank you for that, because I was very nervous, and a great director always makes the actors feel comfortable.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea was to make it an immersive experience. When we watch films, normally the camera's here and the camera's there, and I didn't want Terrell and I to dig up all this personal shit and not have the camera be here. This all goes back to theater, and Hamlet's here doing this thing, and then he steps out, and he addresses the audience. So I thought it was worthwhile to, at certain points, have the characters address the audience. The cinematographer and I went to film school together, so we've been working together for 15 years. He's done probably 90% of the things I've ever worked on. And so we just have a rapport, I don't storyboard, but I shot list. And most of these locations are places that Terrell and I grew up in. I spent a lot of time in. So I described the play as Terrell took a memory of my memories and put them into this dream state. And the cinematographer and I said repeatedly, it's not neorealism, and it's not misrealism. We're gonna have, this sort of dreamlike quality that rises from character. And the only other thing I'll say about the imagery is, someone asked me a question of, were you afraid that you were making a film that was too beautiful, too picturesque, because the subject matter is so heavy? And you know, where we grew up, you know, there's all this green grass and bright sky, and people's skin is always sweating because literally your pores are replenishing themselves. And so to have not embraced that beauty to me would have been immoral, you know, because it would have been untruthful. And the sound was the same way. You know, we wanted to immerse you guys. And there's a style of hip hop, I don't know if you guys get it over here, called chopped and screwed, where they like take the music and slow it down and pitch it. And as the movie goes on and this character puts on more of this armor, the music becomes more and more chopped and screwed. And I didn't want the orchestral score to clang with that. So as the movie's going on, we're taking the orchestra, these pizzicato strings and violin and cello, and we're chopping and screwing that also. And so this rumble you hear in the theater, you know, it's not coming from the trunk of a car, although it could if it was playing Bach. You know, it's coming from this orchestral score, because instead of taking the hood to the art house, I want to take the art house to the hood, you know, and make it fluid. So, yeah, it was very important to me, the sound and image. Yeah, you know, it was kind of embedded in Terrell's play. I mean, if you want, you can take it, bro, and talk about Juan and things like that. But yeah, I was never worried about that because I grew up in this place. So to me, a stereotype is created from the outside, not from the inside. I just wanted to portray these people accurately as I knew them growing up.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I think it's important that we understand that there are, I mean, we as human beings categorize and create tropes and archetypes. But one of the things that I think the reason I kept trying to bring this story up was because I was experiencing a level of transition. That's what we'll call it. And I kept thinking about back to the moment that I had experienced the most love, without any qualifiers, without any asking. And that time was when a drug dealer got off his crate and decided to teach me how to ride my bike. I was sitting there struggling to get from one point to another, and he saw me sort of wobbling, and he was like, "Yo, man, get on the bike." And he taught me how to ride a bike that day. So well that when my dad was like, "Hey, do you know how to ride a bike?" I was like, "Nah," and I had to fake it, right? But his generosity that day and forward, I mean, always stayed with me, sorry. And so it was important to me to tell those stories, because as the person before you said, in the world we live in, we kind of see one version of what's going on in these intimate places in Miami. I mean, how many of you have been to Miami?
I know that one has.
Okay. And how many of you have been to Liberty City?
I know that one has.
Okay. So
She's from the home, Terrell.
No.
I saw Gus Van Sant's Psycho there.
Sure.
Right?
But the incredible thing is that was a lot of people to have gone to a city in the south of America, but never having to see an actual town that's in the actual city limits, right? So South Beach is not in the city limits. Liberty City is probably one of the few neighborhoods that's actually within the Miami city limits, and yet these are the stories that never escape the sunshine and rum. These are the stories that never get past the sea breezes and the big buildings. And it was important for us, for you to hear that. Because once now you know that, you can see, you will now remember that every book is not by its cover. Every moonlit night isn't romantic.
I'm going to bring it back to identity, because in this film, it's not only an extraordinary film about blackness, it's also an extraordinary film about queerness. And I wanted to, you know, in box office terms, you're kind of flirting with a great, you know, set of, and I would say in our industry, prejudices around what kind of future a film like this could have. I think we're seeing that future change, but not fast enough. And I wonder if you could sort of address that a little.
I'm just ignorant. I don't think about shit like that. I kind of just set out to make the film, you know? And I made it with partners who never, ever blinked. You know, there's people from A24 all over the room, and they're quite modest. They don't normally want to take credit for things, but people go, oh, was it really difficult to get that film made? Because it's been 8 years since I made a film, which people always remind me of. And I go, no, you know, there were 5 years that were really difficult, but once this came into being, you know, it got to A24 and Plan B, and they just did not blink. You know, I was like, it's gonna be 3 chapters, cool. It's gonna be 3 main actors, no stars, cool. It's gonna be like really weird and arty, cool. It's gonna be chopped and screwed, cool. And so I'm like, you know, you guys are also the distributor, right? They were like, yeah, we got it, don't worry about it. You know, the whole thing was just do it the way you and Terrell see it and feel it. And you know, what's the phrase, Mr. Shakespeare? What dreams may come?
What dreams may come?
And I feel like the reaction we've gotten, I'm looking around this room, and maybe there's one person, there ain't too many people here who are from Liberty City, Florida, and yet you guys are still here, and you clapped, and your hearts shook when they should. So I think if we just proceed with that same mindset, and not give a damn about who's in the audience, you know, but expecting that no matter who's there, they will respond to who is here. The rest of it is arithmetic, you know.
And what else can we tell but intimate stories? What else can, I mean, I could fabricate some story about people who live in Hollywood Hills and try to give it to you, but would it have the full weight of myself behind it? I mean, that's the thing that was important. I think I'm almost certain, and I don't want to speak for Jeremy, but that's why he got behind you and didn't blink, because he could see someone who was bringing their full self to a story, bringing their full power. Barry put his life into this piece. I saw dailies where you were running around and pictures of you sweating and running back and forth. I mean,
it was hot.
I mean, you were working. I mean, he describes this work as wood chopping, and that's what he was doing. He was putting his back into it, and I think that's important for us to remember. Like, why go big or go home? Step up or stand down. And I think we have to tell the stories that we have. Otherwise, who else will tell them?
Well, and I will say this, what a time to be alive, because, you know, Brad Pitt's name is on this movie for God knows what reason. I can tell you the reason, you know, he's like, you know, y'all need to tell some stories, you know? Bring me a story that's interesting and deep and personal, and, you know, I can't tell this story, but I can help you get the story told, you know? And that's the orbit that this film fell into. And I think it's why it's come out, I think, in this way, not filtered, you know? I mean, what are the first lines of this movie? Don't repeat that. Everybody's like,
Well, I'm sure that everybody here will join me in thanking A24 and Plan B for making it happen, and the team from Moonlight. Congratulations on an extraordinary film.